we are going to go over the answers to the review sheet for chapters 9.1 to 9.4 for your test that will be tomorrow. So the first 3 questions that we have just say evaluate the square root. Now, when it's a perfect square, as long as you know the answer, there's really no work to show. But these signs are what we need to pay attention, because whatever sign they put on the outside has to be in your answer. So Ethan, what did you get for number 1?
Positive and negative 12.
Perfect. Positive and negative 12. Okay. Austin, what did you get for number 2?
Positive, negative 11.
Do you need the positive negative sign? No, because it's not, if it is not given to you out front, you don't need it. Basically, all they're asking you for is just the positive square root of 121. So yesterday on the quiz when I was grading them, I did not count off for people who put them. However, on the test tomorrow, you will not get full credit if you put the sign and it's not needed, because they're not asking you for the positive negative. They're just asking you for the positive, okay? And Stephen, what did you get for number 3? Negative 5. Very good. Why would your answer not be undefined?
Because the negative is on the outside.
Very good. The negative is right here on the outside. If it was underneath the radical, like here, then it would be undefined. Okay? Does anybody have any questions over these? So then the next the next 2, it says evaluate the expression for b squared minus 4ac. So this is a formula that they will give to you, okay? And you are just going to plug in the numbers and simplify it. So we're going to have our radical here, and then I've got 8 squared minus 4 times negative 2 times negative 8. So then I'm just going to simplify. I'm going to do 8 squared first. What's 8 squared? 64. Then I'm going to do like this, because I want you to pay attention, because sometimes we're going to have a subtraction problem, but sometimes it will be addition, and it all depends on how many negative signs you have. So we're multiplying negative 4 times negative 2 times negative 8. How many negative signs is that? 3. So is this going to be a subtraction problem or addition? Subtraction. So you can go ahead and put your minus sign there and then just multiply. 4 times 2 is 8 times 8 is 64. Okay, we keep our square root sign. What's 64 minus 64? 0. Can the square root of 0 be simplified? Does 0 have a square root? Yes, it does. It's 0. So don't forget, if it can be simplified, we must simplify it. Okay, then the next one, we're going to do the exact same thing. We've got 5 squared minus 4 times 1. If you notice, all I did was just plug in the numbers here. What's 5 squared? 25. Now, I'm going to multiply, but let's count up. Is this going to be an addition or a subtraction problem? Subtraction. Why? Because there's only one negative. 4 times 4 is 16 times 1 is 16. 25 minus 16 is 9. What's the square root of 9? 3. Do I need the positive and negative sign in this answer? No. Unless it is given to you, you do not need it. Except for when. When do we always need it? When we're solving for the variable, which is exactly what we're going to do now. Okay, so they want us to solve for x. Now, the reason why we have to have a positive or negative is because I can plug in the positive version of the number and the negative, and they will both check out. So I need to have both of the answers as possible solutions. So the first problem here, they give us x squared equals 36. Well, is x all alone? No, not technically, because how many of them are there? 2. So I've got to do the opposite of something being squared, which is what? Square root. So we're going to do square root, which cancels that out. But whatever I do to one side, I do to the other. So now x is all alone. And what is the square root of 36? Positive negative 6. Perfect. Just like that. Okay? You could always plug it back in and check. 6 squared equals 36. Negative 6 squared also equals 36. So you know you got the right answer. Okay? On this next problem, what would I do first? Subtract 5, because we solve it just like we would any regular equation. 5x squared is equal to 15. Now I divide by 5. And I have x squared is equal to 3. Now what do I do? Square root, because I'm doing the opposite of it being squared. But does 3 have an exact square root? No. Can it be simplified with upside down division? No. What sign do I have to have in front? Positive and negative, square root of 3. We leave it just like this. We do not make it a decimal. Do not make it a decimal. We leave it as a radical. Okay? Next problem. What would I do here first? Add 54. Now I have 6x squared is equal to 54. Divide by 6. And we have x squared is equal to 9. Square root. And what does x equal? Positive negative 3. Perfect. Very good. Okay? So that's how we solve equations that's missing the variable that also are being squared. Okay? Does anybody have any questions so far? These are the first 8 questions on your review sheet. Very similar to the 8 questions that will be on your test. Okay? So then the next section, match all the radical expressions with its match the radical expressions with its simplified form. Show work. How do you know what to match where if you don't do upside down division? Oh, well, I plug it in my calculator. I know that. So you must show me work, okay? I need to see that you know how to do this. So what would I start out by doing for 48? Upside down division. What's the smallest number that will go into 48? 2. So I have 24. What number goes into 24? 2. And I have 12. 2, 6, 2, and 3. So what am I looking for here? A pair. So I have a pair of 2s. How many 2s does that represent? 1. I have another pair of 2s. How many 2s does that represent? What am I going to do with these 2 2s? Multiply them. 2 times 2 is 4. And what do I do with this single number that's left here? Under the radical. So 4 times the square root of 3 is what letter? C. So the first one should have been C. Okay? So yes, you're getting graded on whether you have the right letter, but if you don't show me any work, guess how much credit you get? None, because all you did was plug it in your calculator, and that's not what I'm teaching you. I'm not teaching you how to work with your calculator. I'm teaching you how to simplify a radical by upside down division. Okay, so now we're going to do 75. What's the smallest number that can go into 75? 5. We can start with 5. Would 3 go into it? Yeah, but you can start with 5. It's okay. So 75 divided by 5 is 15. Now what number can go into 15? Let's keep 5 again, and then we'll end up with our 3 at the end. I could have chosen 3 and then 5, but then would my pairs have been next to each other? No. So it's just easier to keep with the same number until you can't use it anymore. Okay, so I look for a pair of 5s. I have one. Represents 1 5. And where does that 5 go? Outside or under? Outside. So we have 5 times the square root of 3, which is what letter? A. I'm going to mark these off so we know. Okay, so we left off with 5 times the square root of 3, which was A. The recording cut off for a second, so I'm not sure if that recorded or not. So now we're going to do 125. Upside down division with 125. What's the smallest number that will go into 125? 5. And then we're left with 25, 5, and 5. What happens when I have 3? Can I circle them all and just say it's 5? No, we still have to find pairs. So 1 5 gets to be pulled to the outside, and the other stays underneath. So 5 times the square root of 5, this one is D. Now you say, I know the last one's going to be B, can I just write the answer? No, I want you to practice and show me work, okay? So we're going to do 44. What's the smallest number that's going to 44? 2. 22. 2. 11. Nothing goes into 11, right? So we have 2 times the square root of 11, which is B. Okay? Now, in the next slide, or in the next few problems, 13 through 16, we're going to do the exact same thing, only this time I didn't give you what the answers are going to be. You just have to do it on your own. So we're going to simplify. So the square root of 32, what would I need to do? Upside down division. So we have 32. What's the smallest number that's going to 32? 2, 16, 2, 8, 2, 4, 2, and 2. Okay? So I have a pair of 2's, which is 2, and a pair of 2's, which is 2. We multiply them. 4 times the square root of 2. Do I need the positive negative sign? No. Unless they put it on the outside, you don't need it. Okay? Now look at this next problem. The square root of 4 over the square root of 81. Now, first of all, you want to ask yourself, can the fraction be simplified? 4 and 81. There's no number that goes into 4 and 81. So since we can't simplify, let's break it into two problems. So we're going to have the square root of 4 over the square root of 81. Because basically that's what they're asking us. Does 4 have an exact square root? Yeah, 2. Does 81 have an exact square root? Yeah, 9. And there's my answer. Now, here's the thing that people do. And this, so they have the square root of 4, the square root of 81, and they go, okay, square root of 2 over square root of 9, which is 2 over 3. No, that is not what you do. A square root is not like a fraction that keeps getting reduced. A square root has one answer. It's like saying, what's 2 times 3? It's 6. You can't say, oh, then 6 times 2 is 12, times 2 is 24, times... You don't keep going. There's one answer. So the square root of 81 is 9, not the square root of 9, okay? And the square root of 4 is 2, not the square root of 2. So that is your answer right there. Stephen, did you have a question?
No, I thought it said 2, like 2...
Squared?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, no, that was part of the other problem. Sorry about that. It's kind of confusing. Okay? Now, next one. Can I reduce 5 over 36? No, there's no number that will go into both of them, so I separated out square root of 5 over square root of 36. Now, does the square root of 5, can it be simplified? No. Do I need to do, or does it have an exact square root? Nope. So it's just square root of 5. What about the square root of 36? 6. And this is my answer. Okay? Last but not least on this section, it says 3 times the square root of 14 over 7. Now, this 3 is just going to stay on the outside. We're not doing anything with it because it's a whole number. So we just keep it there, and we want to ask ourselves, can 14 over 7 be reduced? Yes, to what? 2. So I have to keep my square root sign, but then can the square root of 2 be simplified?
No.
Nope. So this is my answer. Just like this. Okay? So that is a review so far, like numbers 1 through 16. So then we turn to the back page of your review sheet, and we're going to get into where we started graphing. Answer the 3 questions for each problem. Does the graph open up or down? Find the vertex, and write an equation for the axis of symmetry. Okay? So here's our first equation right here. Y equals 6x squared. Before we do anything, let's label A, B, and C so that we know exactly what each of them are. What's A? 6. What's B? 0. What's C? 0. Because there is no B and C. There's nothing here at all, so it has to be 0. So the first question that it's going to ask us is, does it open up or down? Up. How did you know that? Because A is a positive number. Anytime A is positive, our graph opens up. When A is negative, our graph opens down. Does it have anything to do with B or C?
Nope.
Nothing at all. Okay, so there's the answer to question number 1. Now, question number 2 says, find the vertex. So where do I start to find a vertex?
Do that.
X equals negative B over 2A.
Very good. X equals negative B over 2A. But what's B in this equation? 0. So I put a 0 up top, 2 times 6, but anything 0 divides by is what? 0. So is that my vertex? Can I box that in? No. Now what do I need to do? Plug it back in to find y, because I'm going to go back to the original equation right here, and wherever or whatever number I got for x, I plug it in and solve for y. So I'm going to do y equals 6 times 0 squared. Well, what's 6 times 0 squared? 0. So my vertex, I want you to write vertex 0, comma 0. And that's the answer to number 2. On the quiz yesterday, I saw people box in x equals as the answer to number 2 and then y equals as the answer to number 3. Okay? So that's our answer to number 2. And then number 3, write an equation for the axis of symmetry. Now, when you see the word equation, what does that mean has to be in the problem? Equals. So guess what? If you just wrote a number, you didn't get any credit, because what equals that number? Is it the x? Is it the y? Is it a z? Is it a? I have no idea, okay? You have to tell me what axis, because the axis of symmetry goes through a certain point on the graph every time. It'll never go through y. It only ever goes through which axis? X. So we must write x equals, and then how do I know what x equals? It's 0, but is it 0 every time?
No,
It's
the X in the...
Very good. It's whatever the x in the vertex is. So x equals 0 is our axis of symmetry. Okay? We must have that x equals. If you just box in 0, it is wrong. If you just box in 0, it's wrong. Okay? Now, I'm going to erase this so that we can do the next one. Let's label A, B, and C. What's A? Negative 1. What's B? Negative 4. What's C? 2. So does the graph open up or down? Down. Let's find the vertex. Where do I start?
X equals negative B over 2.
Negative B over 2A. But what if B is already a negative? What do I do?
Positive.
Make it a positive. 4 over 2 times negative 1. 4 over negative 2 is negative 2. Can I box that in and that be my answer? No. So I go back to my original. Now, this is where I want you to pay attention. So let's plug this in for y, but I want everybody to look right here. What is in front of the x? Negative. Technically a negative what? 1. So if I were you, I would write that, because it's going to make a difference in what y equals. Now I plug in negative 2 squared minus 4 times negative 2 plus 2. Whenever you don't pay attention to that negative sign, if you just think, oh, they were nice and they went ahead and put the negative sign in there for me so I can plug in 2, your answer will be completely wrong. Okay? So what are we going to get for y in this equation, Austin?
0.
Not 0. Who can help him out? Who got a different answer? Chandler? 6 is correct. Now you say, why didn't you show any work on that? Because you can plug this into your calculator. So then our vertex, let's write vertex, is what? Negative 2, comma 6. That's the answer to number 2. And then number 3, write an equation for axis of symmetry. What letter always is an axis of symmetry? X equals what? Negative 2, because it's always the same as the x in our vertex. All right? Now, last but not least, the last 2 questions that are going to be like the last 2 questions on your test are graphing. Okay, so it says graph the quadratic equation, and that's the only set of instructions that I'm going to give to you. So you've got to know where to start, what to do, how to plug it in your calculator. So we're going to walk all the way through that, okay? So step number 1, what should I do?
Label it.
Find A, B, and C. Very good. What's A? 4. What's B? 8. What's C?
-3.
-3. Now what?
Equation.
Very good. X equals negative b over 2a. The vertex is the most important part in the parabola, so I have to start by finding that. So, because if I don't know the vertex, then I can't graph anything. It's just going to be random dots. Okay, so we have -8 over 2 times 4, which is -8 over 8, which is -1. Now what do I do? X, Y chart. Very good. Do we need to plug it back in and solve for Y? No, it's not like what we were doing on the last slide where we need to find the vertex only. We're going to do this whole chart, and that's actually going to give us the vertex. Where does this -1 go? In the middle, and I'm going to do 2 numbers smaller than it. Can they be any random 2 numbers? No, they have to be the next smallest, like if you were looking on a number line. So what number would be smaller than -1? -2. Smaller than that? -3. What number is larger than -1? 0 and 1. So now this is where we use our calculator. So I want you to get out your calculator. What mode should your calculator be in? 3, or table mode, okay? Whatever calculator you have, as long as it is in table mode. Some of you it may be 3, some of you it's 7, some of you it may be different, okay? So that's going to give you what you see on your calculator, and it should see f of x equals. That's what your calculator should say. F of x is just another way to say y, because it's called function form, all right? And what we're going to do is we are going to type in our original equation, 4x squared plus 8x minus 3, into the calculator just how it looks. So I'm going to type in 4. Then what do I hit to get an x? Alpha x squared, then plus 8. Then how do I get an x again? Alpha x. Where is the x right above? The parenthesis button on your calculator. Then minus 3. So that should be what you see in your calculator. Does anybody not see that? Does anybody need help getting that? Okay. So once you have that equation typed in, we just press equals. And it takes us to the next screen, which is going to say g of x. So this is what you should see now. G of x equals. Now, this would be for plugging in another equation. So if we needed to graph 2 parabolas at one time, we could do that. Or a parabola in another line, or a parabola in a circle, something like that. It would allow us to do that. But we don't want to, okay? We only have one. So we just press equals, and we skip over that. And it asks us start, question mark. Where does our chart start at? -3. We are always going to plug in the smallest number first. So we're going to type in -3 and then press enter. And it asks us end, question mark. Well, where does our chart end? At +1. So I put in 1 and I press equals. And then it says step. And we just press equals because your step should always be 1. Double check that number and make sure it is 1 because sometimes, you know, it could be something else. So we just want to make sure it's 1, press equals, and then it's going to give you all of the answers that go in your table, starting with -3. So what's the y value for -3? 9. Then we have -3, -7, -3, and 9. And now we're going to graph this. Do I need to see your table and your work? Yes. If I do not see your table and your work, you're not going to get any credit. Okay, so our first point is going to be at -3, +9. So I go to the left 3 and up 9. And my point's going to be right there. Then I have -2, -3. So I go over -2 and I'm going to go down 3. I don't think I made my graph quite long enough. So then I have -1, -7. Okay, then I have 0, -3, and 1, 9. Draw my line through. Okay. Okay, so let's graph the last one here. So what should we start off by doing? A, B, and C. So A is equal to 1, B is equal to 4, C is equal to -1. All right. What's our first step?
The vertex thing.
-B over 2A. So -4 over 2 times 1. -4 over 2, which is -2. So we make our X and Y chart now. We put -2 in the middle. What are two numbers smaller than -2? -3, -4, then -1 and 0. So we get out our calculator. We're going to do all those steps again. We're going to plug it in. What's our start? -4. What's our end? 0. So when I do all of that in my calculator, what are the numbers that I get? Very good, okay? So now I'm going to graph it. So my first point is at -4, -1. So I go over -4, down -1. Then -3, -4. Then -2, -5. -1, -4. And 0, -1. Now make sure, I saw some people do this on the quiz, and I didn't count off for it, that your parabolas has arrows at the end of it, because the parabola keeps going. Just because we're not showing the points doesn't mean it stops. It keeps going, okay? So this is the review for your test 9.1 to 9.4 that we have tomorrow, Wednesday, okay? There will be help class tomorrow morning at 7:25 a.m.